topic for the panel discussion is globalization, food safety challenges, and the role of regulations in shaping the Indian food industry.
Just take you from our eminent moderator's words about globalization and the consumer, the business, and the regulator. You touched on three aspects. I'll begin with a story which is a real-life story. I'm sure many of you would remember the drama that took place in 2003, if I remember the year, on pesticide residue in bottled water. There was this NGO led by another famous, very feisty lady, Sunita Narayan, who spoke about the pesticide residue standards in India being lower than what they were in Europe. And that drama led to the Bureau of Indian Standards, which actually regulates bottled water. In front of you, you have ISI mark on that, led to a change in our standards almost overnight to incorporate what were European limits of pesticide residue. Even at that stage, if my memory serves me right, those were draft regulations of Europe at that point of time, which were incorporated in the Indian regulation. So that is one part of globalization where a very emotional pitch will be made by consumers that if Europe eats X kind of food, why not we? Legitimately so. The second part of it, I happen to be a year later a director of BIS in Lucknow office. I had with me 12 bottled water units holding a BIS license for bottled water. When we enforced this standard on, if I remember the date right, 16th August 2004, 6 of them went out of the fold. They said they couldn't afford the cost of testing which the new standards has imposed, pesticide residue testing, and they are small scale industry. They went out and chose to become bottlers for Coke and Pepsi rather than being producers of bottled water. So that's globalization for you, impacting both the consumers and the industry. Now when it comes to regulation, I mean, many of you perhaps don't realize government does move slow, admittedly, but we have done something remarkable in India as far as food regulation is concerned. Getting 8 or 9 acts repealed into one as Food Safety and Standards Act itself is remarkable. There are certain provisions in this act which have not yet been operationalized, but which are, once operationalized, they could become, in certain ways, role model for even rest of the world. You know, this act was framed in 2005, 2006. We are talking about enforcement of regulations. We are talking of standards. Surely, we need to move towards standards which are international, which is Codex in this case. And there is a very conscious effort in Food Authority, and I am sure all of you are aware. There's right now an exercise going on, harmonization of standards with the Codex. Second part of it is that we all know, all of you who are in food business, that it is the food safety systems, it's not the end product standard which is important. Now increasingly everywhere food safety systems are being prescribed by law. And we made that first attempt in 2011 regulations when we made GMP, GHP compulsory under our law. So today, by law, good manufacturing, good hygienic practices are compulsory. So we are moving towards globalization in terms of our standards. The enforcement side, which has always been the sore point in India, it's not always the standards and the system on paper which has been sore point in India. It has been the enforcement of that system which is sore point. Now if you look at, again, you look at a common failing across all regulations in India, and I have been arguing this with many regulators, that we have had a system of regulation where the regulator says, here is the standard for the industry, number one, and two, my inspector will come and inspect you and verify